Greetings, 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 greetings. Once again, it's me, your King Clifford Jefferson, ascendant of Godfrey, the fifth kind of man, Jews from the folk, ruler of Jerusalem. I'm the reincarnation of King Edgar the Peaceful, which we denote to as Jesus Christ. I'm actually filling that threefold station as priest, elder, and king. Priest, elder, and king. Priest is the spokesman, elder is the priest, parcel. The priest is the prophet is the spokesman, the priest is the elder, and the king is the kindred. Descended down from the olden kings from olden times, known as the Plantagenet kings. If you watch my previous last four lectures, I've proven that. But today's lesson is not about that. Today's lesson is called They're Paying for What You Have, even though you pay it for yourself. They're paying for what you have, even though you're paying it for yourself, paying for yourself what you want. When I say they, I mean the government. When I say the government, I mean the government itself, which is a corporation, and the monopoly that they incorporate through their licenses. It's all about trade, international trade and domestic trade. In order for you to trade goods, you must have a medium of exchange. And for all those who don't know, a medium of exchange is just a currency, unit of exchange, store credit, what else? We'll go through the terms in a second. But once again, I always say it's very important for you to ask questions. Ask questions. This is very important because as a student, you're subject to what's being taught. All right. So the first thing about anything is the law that governs it. I don't care what it is. Everything is governed by a law. All right. You got the law governing science. You got the law governing mathematics. You got the law governing building. You got a law governing teaching. You got a law governing law. You got a law governing finances. You got a law governing trade. You got a law governs everything. That's the nature of the law. Before you can go into the nature of the law, you must understand the study of the law and the origins of the study of the law and where it derives from. Because written law only derives from common usage. Once the common law is gone, then comes the written law, because the written law is that which is recorded. So for all those who want to get an understanding about law, when I say law, I'm talking about law going back to time immemorial from a legal perspective. All right. And in order for you to get an understanding of the legal perspective about law, you first must be a student. All right. You first must become a student of the law. And most people out there seeing and talking about law have not been a student of any type of university whatsoever. No studentry, no teachings done by a professor of law in a university where law is taught, and any university that exists in this present day. Those who, in our paradigm, as people of, for lack of a better term, Negro, black, colored, Ethiopian, they never told you about law. You have to go to their law schools to learn about law. And the bar for the study of law is the Bar Association. You must meet that requirement. So everyone who goes into the profession of law dreads the position of sitting in that chair, especially on the topic dealing with law, because you got all types of law. And most of the law that's being taught in those forums are deficient in law, in the study of law, in the origin where law is taught. Because where they're being taught in these present universities, there were universities that existed prior to that, going back to time immemorial. Two top universities such as Cambridge and Oxford University. They were all created by the Plantagenet, the Crown, and the King Henry II, son of Godfrey V, Count of Anjou. Look it up. Cambridge and Oxford University. All right. Some of the deficient lawyers, scholars, master teachers who came out of there first became students. And the most important thing about being a student in that craft is in your infancy. Just like a baby being born, he ain't gonna understand what to do in his years as a teenager and adult as a result of what he learned in his infancy. So it comes with any school of thought, whether you're being taught by your mama, whether you're being taught by your daddy, whether you're being taught by school, police force, what they call the Olympics, whatever thing that you choose as a profession, it's what you're subject to. And you're not the only one choosing that profession. And it's the best of the best of the best of the best. And it all comes down to where you're studying, who you're studying under, and how much they know. William Blackstone was a master scholar. He lived in the 17th century. And he stated, and we're not talking about case law. Case law is not common law. Case law is cases decided by judges. Common law is the uses of law recorded in what we call maxims of law, codes, etc. It has nothing to do with complainants, parties. It's just law recorded, or maximum law recorded for those who study law as historians of the law. And first, to become a historian of the law, you must be a student of the law. And where you're being taught the law is very important. So none of you have a clue about law as regards as how it's being taught as regard of the deficiency of the origin of the common law. And common law was invented in the time of memorial by Henry II, Godfrey V, Count of Anjou. So without further ado, as I said, the topic is they are paying for everything that you want, even though they allow you to pay for it with the money that they create, because you're subject to the medium of exchange of what the government created for you to use as a medium of exchange. And that's what we're going to talk about today. All right. In honor of my queen, as well as in honor of Archbishop Belmont from the House of Belmont and all those who are part of the English Theological Church of England, this one's for you. All right, so let's get started. I always have my card for me, so bear with me. Everybody see the topic? This is from Insiders. Does U.S. paper currency really perfectly match the color of monopoly money? Because banks are part of a monopoly. And monopolies are given by a charter. Charters are given by way of what we call incorporation through the state. If you're not doing it through the state, then you're doing it by United States government, which could only be sanctioned or authorized by the president. He's the one who issues out letter packets. In order for you to have a monopoly, you must have a letter packet. You must have a letter packet. Letter packets were originally issued by the monarch, but under the United States government, which derived their authority from the Articles of Confederation, they were not under a president at that particular time. The Articles of Association, what was it? Articles of Confederation. It was not a president at that particular time. It was only a legislative branch of government that was administratively functioned under the crown. All right. The government that was created by the government of what you call the 13 colonies, or the what you call the Articles of Confederation or Perpetual Union, was just an ideology. An ideology. And the money they used to back that ideological government was paper money. Okay, let's get started. The following images is going viral today via Free Beacon Lackland Marquet, a legend showing that the government has possibly, by coincidence, made the color of the new US dollar denominations identical to their monopoly money counterparts. So everybody pull out the money in your pockets, wherever you got it, and compare it to what you're going to be shown here today. All right. Let me blow this up a little bit more for you. All right, there's the 50, there's the 20, there's the 10, there's the 5, and there's the 1. All right, these instruments are financial instruments. They're called banknotes. They are called banknotes, paper currency, what else they're called? Greenbacks, quiet. Paper currency, all right? Legal tender, dollar bills, whatever you want to call them. These are the legal instruments that were used and created at legal tender as a medium of exchange. It's not money. It is not money. I warn you. I'm warning you now. What you hold in your very pocket is not money. It's paper. Paper is not a commodity for bartering and what we call trade. Because trade involves bartering system. The check is another story. We'll talk about that in a second. But for right now, we're talking about banknotes. Banknotes are not considered money. They are called promissory notes, outside of all the other names I just gave it. They're legally called promissory notes. All right. Below is what U.S. currency actually looks like via the government's own unaltered images on newmoney.gov versus what we call the Reddit version. We include the $1 bill, which was not part of the new currency series. Now we know that the Federal Reserve System were given authority to mint and print money. That's the authority that the government reserve had. Prior to the federal system, they were still using paper currency in the colony to trade and do commerce. It was unlawful to use that type of currency as a result of the laws that were passed under the administration under the crown at that particular time. Under the Currency Act of 1851, the Currency Act of 1764, the Currency Act of 1772, and 1773. Hell, it was forbidden in the Constitution, Article 1, 6, and 10. Nothing should be used to pay debts other than gold and silver, which was exchanged for that medium that you hold in your pocket. In this case, we're talking about the dollar bill. And a dollar bill, banknote, currency, money, whatever you want to call it, is not money. It's a promise that you're going to pay them later with the money once real money come back into circulation, but it will not come back into circulation because it does not belong to you who hold that money, because under the Compromise of 1790, the Residency Act of 1790, and which is that the Registry Act of 1790, the Compromise of 1790, and the Funding Act of 1790, you all were pledged as the debt. So that's why in Article 6 of the United States Constitution, that all debts contracted under Articles of Confederation are still valid, and everything that was done under Articles of Confederation, the United States has pledged their property. All right, whoever bears these instruments is the bearer instrument, means you have a interest in that instrument that you hold, but you lack the understanding of what it is that you're holding, but you will have an understanding of that. All right. That's the $5 bill. Look how similar it looks to the Monopoly $5 bill. Look at the colorization. All right. Look at the colorization. Here's the $10 bill. Take a good look at it, everybody. Take a good look at it. There's the $20 bill. Look at the color, y'all. Look at the color. Color of money. There's the 50. You see that word right there? Specimen. Specimen. Y'all see that? Very, 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 very important. Let me see if we got it in the other ones. Yeah, right there. Specimen. There's the 50. All right. So you've seen all the denominations of financial instruments that are being used in circulation today by the bearer of it. All right. But the bearer of the instrument fails to understand what it is that they're holding. They're assuming that what they're holding in their hand as the bearer of the instrument is money. It is not money. It's not backed by anything. What it is a debt note. It's called a debt note. So if the more money you got in your pocket, the more debt you owe. And everything that you use to pay for with that instrument is not being bought. I'm going to show you why. Because the species that you're holding is not considered a commodity. It's not used for barter. It's used in colorable trade, such as what they call domestic trade, which you use today. But in international trade, they don't use promissory notes or bank notes. They use bill of exchanges. A bill of exchange evolved from what we call, the check evolved from a bill of exchange. A promissory note, a bank note evolved from a promissory note. Once again, the check evolved from a bill of exchange. A bank note evolved from a promissory note. So neither one of those are classified as true currency, true money. I need to understand what I'm talking about. All right. Wildcat banking. Wildcat banking was the issuance of paper currency, i.e., banknotes, in the United States by poorly capitalized state chartered banks. I went over this already. This is nothing new. These wildcat banks existed alongside more stable state banks during the free banking era. This was through the Second Bank of the United States, all right, from 1816 to 1836 to 1865, when the country had no national banking system. The first Bank of America was issued by Roger Morris, all right? Roger Morris was a member of the Articles of Confederation. He was the superintendent of finance before he elected Alexander Hamilton to be Secretary of the Department of Treasury. I already talked about this. States granted bank charters readily and applied regulations ineffectively, if at all. You see it still going on today. Bank closures and outright scams regularly occur, leaving people with worthless money. This is what's going on today, y'all. Your money you have is worthless. It's worthless. Operating in remote locations with limited or absent financial infrastructure, they're not governed by the commercial bank or the central bank. You're dealing with commercial banks. Commercial banks are not central banks. The central bank is the bank of the federal government. All right? Every other monopoly, i.e. corporation, is doing the very exact thing we're talking about. Because when you get paid, what do they give you? They give you a check. Anybody know what a check is? It's a specimen of what we call a bill of exchange. You go and endorse that check for a promissory note, i.e. a bank note, i.e. dollar bills. Yes, this is what you do. You endorse it. You know what the word endorse means, to back it. The monopoly, i.e. the corporation, is already set up with the bank. So when you go, so when you get paid, and when you get paid, that means that you're supposed to be paid with money. You go right to that bank, endorse that check to the bank, and they pay you back with a promise. That has a cancellation date, I might add. It's called 90-day paper. Under the CBDC, Central Banking Digital Currency, what they call Feds now, all the money you now have in your pocket, it has to be accounted for. So you can no longer hold on to it. It will expire. Operating in remote locations with limited and absent financial infrastructure, wildcat banks supply a medium of exchange. A medium of exchange is a currency, all right, in the form of a bearer's note. A bearer's note is called bearer bonds or bearer certificates. A bearer instrument is a document that entitles the holder of the document to rights of ownership of title to the underlying property. So what property do you have a right to if you're holding that bearer instrument, known as what they call a promissory note, i.e. paper currency? That means that must be to be able to be redeemed for that property if you hold that bearer instrument. Which could be either a check or a bank note, which is what we call a bill of exchange, or what we call promissory note. Bank note, promissory note, bill of exchange, check. In this case, we're talking about a promissory note, which is a bank note, which is paper currency, which if you have it in your possession, it's called a bearer note, which entitles you to the holder to property because you hold that document, that financial instrument in your hand, all right? So if it's able to be redeemed, right? Because it's in the bearer instrument is the holder of the document to the rights of ownership of the title to the underlying property. The underlying property, what is the underlying property? These notes were formerly redeemable in specie, i.e. gold or silver, but typically collateralized by other assets such as government bonds or real estate notes, or occasionally by nothing at all. Hence, they carry a risk that the bank cannot redeem them on demand. Y'all need to pay attention, seriously, because what's coming down the pipe, you will not be ready for. You will not be ready for. I'm gonna prove it. They're lying to each and every one of you. You have no money. Let's go through this. This is hard to do. Investopedia. We teach from Wikipedia, which is baby food information for you because you're in your infancy right now. So for you to talk about law governing commercial instruments, I have to explain it to you in baby terms. So I chose Investopedia. Show you how to invest your money. Invest your money is your time, because there is no money that you can invest that's considered what we call true commodity. There is none. So the only commodity that you can invest in is yourself, because you at one time was a commodity. So you have to invest in yourself, and investing yourself is in your studies about what it is that you once were or still is. If you're a commodity, being that you're the one being traded, or you're able to trade commodities. And the only commodity that you can trade is what's considered a lawful commodity, i.e. gold and silver. That's understanding money, because a lot of you think you got money. You really think you have money, but you have nothing. What is money? The definition, history, types, and creation. Please pay very close attention. Money is any item or medium of exchange that is accepted by people for the payment of goods and services, as well as the repayment of loans, i.e. a debt. Money makes the world go round. Economies rely on money to facilitate transactions and to power financial growth. Typically, it is economics who defines money, where it comes from, what it's worth. Here is a multifaceted characteristics of money. Listen, key takeaways. Money is the medium of exchange that allows people and businesses to obtain what they need to live and thrive. Money. You think you're getting paid money, you're not being paid money. Bartering was one way that people exchanged goods for other goods before money was created. Barter system. Beans, rice, corn, that was used to barter. But now we're in the modern days and they created money. Money was created in the Middle Ages. As you can see, it was called crown gold. Every other nation had their medium of exchange, but in England and in French, we had crown gold or crown bullion, because gold is bullion, a certain type of alloy. Like gold and other precious metal, money has worth because for most people, it represents something of valuable. Once again, like gold and other precious metal, money has worth because for most people, it represents something valuable. So you deem what you think is valuable. Roger Sherman, who created the Anti-Sherman Act, which is the Antitrust Act dealing with anti-monopoly laws, which govern trade practices, he specified that gold was to go back into circulation under the Specie Resumption Act of 1875. Let's go through that right quick. Species. $1875, I'm not mistaken. Yeah, 1875. On my birthday, y'all. On my birthday. Excuse me. Species Payment Resumption Act. The Species Payment Resumption Act of January 14th, 1875 was a law in the United States that restored the nation to the gold standard through the redemption of previously unbacked United States notes, which you have in your pocket now, and reverse inflationary government policies promoted directly after the American Civil War. The decision further contracted the nation's money supply and was seen by critics as an exacerbation factor of the so-called loan depression, which struck in 1873. All right, listen, y'all, listen. We already know that greenbacks is unlawful. I'm going to go down to Roger Sherman. Listen. Here we go. Bear with me, y'all. Should I had it pulled up? Oh, here we go. Everybody see this? The Resumption Act was hotly debated during the 1880s presidential elections, with most Western politicians opposed to it. All right. Species payment finally resumed during the presidency of Rutherford B. Hayes, aided by the return of prosperity in 1877. Secretary to the Treasury John Sherman, his name was John Sherman, not Robert Sherman. John Sherman accumulated a gold reserve to be redeemed for existing greenbacks, mostly from transactions with Europe. Sherman earmarked a redemption fund by January 1st, 1879, that amounted to $133 million acquired from the sales bonds to Europe and Treasury surplus. However, when the people found greenbacks to be on par with gold, they lost their desire for redemption. Did everybody hear that? The people thought that paper currency was par with gold, so it lost their desire for redemption in gold. That's why it was taken out of circulation. I hope everybody understands that. Who was John Sherman? Let's see. I think it's called the Sherman Act. I just want to make sure. We just look that up, the Sherman Act. You should be pulling this up on your own, everyone. Everyone should be pulling this up on their own. There we go. Sherman Antitrust Act. There we go. Sherman Antitrust Act. The Sherman Antitrust Act is governed under Title 15 United States Code, Section 1 through 7. For all those who are watching this video, I suggest you go check that United States Code out. All right. The Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890, coded as you see on the screen, is the United States antitrust law, which prescribes the rule of free competition among those engaged in commerce. It was passed by Congress in the name for Senator John Sherman and his principal author. All right. What are antitrust laws? The United States antitrust law is a collection of mostly federal laws that regulate the conduct and organization of businesses to promote competition and prevent unjust monopolies. You see that? Unjust monopolies. So the antitrust law deals with laws against competition, competition against monopolies, and you're not to violate the antitrust law for those of the seller. So if you have are the maker of it, you are not, especially if you're the king. If the monopoly were given by, let's check this out. This is making it more simple for you. Monopoly, single alone, it's describing it is a market with the absence of competition, creating a situation where a specific person or enterprise is the only supplier of a particular thing. So the owner, the true owner, is a supplier, right? Because if you buy something from a seller, so that means that you got the medium of exchange to buy something. The seller is trying to sell something. He ain't got no medium of exchange because he ain't got no money, or else he won't be selling what he has. Once again, the buyer is the one who has the money. He's the payer. The one who's selling is the payee, because he's going to receive the money as a result of the transaction between both parties. So that means that the seller expects to get paid based off the medium of exchange that's given by the payer. The payer is the drawer, because the drawer draws on the account that's employed by what we call a bank. Because every employer that you go work for has connection to the bank unless they pay you under the table. Then in that case, they give you regular bank notes or promissory notes. If you work in a legitimate job, then they give you a check, i.e. a bill of exchange, which you have to endorse. All right. Let me go on a little further. This contrasts with a monopoly, which relates to a single entity control of a market to purchase a good or services with I have a hard time pronouncing these words, with oligopoly and duopoly, which consists of a few sellers dominating the market. Monopolies are thus characterized by a lack of economic competition to produce the goods or services, a lack of viable, suitable goods, and the possibility of a high monopoly price well above the seller's marginal cost that leads to high monopoly profits. So this is what's going on. Inflation and deflation as a result of not having a sound medium of exchange. All right. The monopolies that are running here can't use gold and silver because they're not licensed to use gold and silver, because the original owner of the gold and silver is the only one who can purchase things in lieu of what we call trade and commerce. All right. On the Articles of Confederation, it was the Treaty of Amity and Commerce. Yes, the 13 colonies only had the ability to do trade and commerce, but they had no medium of exchange to do trade and commerce, because the trade and commerce that was used at the medium of exchange that was used for trade and commerce at that time of the Articles of Confederation was supposed to be gold and silver. Hope you understand. Let's see where was I? Where is the screen share? Pause. Give me 1 second anymore. Oh, here we go. Now, where is my bar? Here we go. All right, what is money? So we see money is the medium of exchange that allows people and businesses to obtain what they need to live and thrive. People and businesses. People are not corporations, and corporations are not people. All right? But people need to thrive, and corporations need to thrive to obtain what they need to live and thrive. Bartering was one way that people exchanged goods for other goods before money was created. And it ain't nothing about no businesses or corporations. Like gold and other precious metals, money has worth because in most people it represents something of value, not the corporations. Because corporations can't use gold and silver. That's why I was looking at the circulation, because people were created and made legal entities, i.e. legal persons, i.e. corporations. All right. Fiat money is a government issued currency that is not backed by a physical commodity, but by the stability of the issuing government. I repeat, everybody pick that instrument they got in their hand and read that paragraph, that sentence, that bullet point. Fiat money is a government issued currency that is not backed by a physical commodity, but by the stability of the issuing government. Now, when government allows corporations to incorporate and corporate pay their employees, you get a check, a bill of exchange, right? A bill of exchange is a check, which is also called a demand bill of exchange, to be paid on the due date that's signed on that check. And then whoever is the bearer of the instrument has the right to endorse that bill of exchange for immediate payment. You can't do that with the promissory note or the bank note or the currency because it's already endorsed. It's already endorsed, everyone. Above all, money is a union of account, a socially accepted standard unit with which things are priced. I hope y'all understand what y'all reading. Before the development of medium of exchange, that is money, people were bartered to obtain goods and services they needed. Two individuals, each possessing some goods, and the other one, would enter into agreement to trade. Early forms of bartering, however, do not provide the transferability and the divisibility that makes trading efficient. For instance, if someone had cows but needs bananas, they must find someone who not only has bananas, but also has desire for meat. What if that individual finds someone who has the need for meat, but not bananas, and can only offer potatoes? Question mark. To get meat, that person must find someone who has bananas and want potatoes, and so on. So as we can see, the barter system is very important because it gives the ability for each and every one who needs something from the other one to be able to exchange equally. All right. But with the promissory note or the bank note, it has no value. It's not a commodity. We just read it for ourselves on Investopedia. Fiat money, paper money, banknotes, greenbacks is a government issued currency that is not backed by a physical commodity, but the stability of the issuing government. That's a problem. That results to what we said, wildcat banking. So everything that you pay for is not backed, even if you're paying for it, because it's not used to actually purchase things. The paper currency or the greenback is only a promissory note. The promise that you're going to pay for it later. We call that credit. All right, we call that credit. All right, let's move forward. Why am I- Where's my table of contents at? There, I don't see mine. Oh, here we go. All right, so we know what money is. Money is not promissory notes or bill of exchanges. They're just a medium of exchange. They're nothing more than a negotiable instrument. Everybody say that. A medium of exchange is nothing more than a negotiable instrument, right? It's not considered money because that negotiable instrument used as the medium of exchange for the one who bears it, who holds it, is entitled to redeem it for that property. That property is gold and silver. But when you go to the bank, do they give you back gold and silver? No. Why not? We're going to get to the bottom of it. All right. What's the banknote? What are banknotes and how they are used? A banknote is a negotiable promissory. A banknote is a negotiable promissory note which one party can use to pay another party a specific amount of money. A banknote is payable to the bearer on demand on the amount payable and apparent on the face of the note. Banknotes are considered legal tender along with coins, and they make up the bearer forms of modern money. I'm gonna read this again. A banknote is a negotiable promissory note which one party can use to pay another party a specific amount of money. A banknote is payable to the bearer on demand, and the amount payable is apparent on the face of the note. So just like you see in a bill of exchange, you have to write that amount in. But you can see on the promissory note, the amount is already denoted on the actual note. All right? And that is used as the medium of exchange, but neither one constitute money. They just deemed it as a legal tender to pay debt. But the Constitution says the only thing you can use to pay a debt is gold and silver. They already endorsed the promissory note, so you have to use it. It's a contract. Where the check, when you endorse it, you agree to back the promissory note. Because when you get paid, they give you back a promise. Hold on for 1 second. Bear with me, everyone. Thank you. I really appreciate it. So we see what is a banknote. We know a banknote, greenback, legal tender, whatever you have in your pocket, no matter what denomination it is, it's a promissory note. All right. It looks just like monopoly money. A banknote is a negotiable promissory note which one party can use to pay another party with another party a specific amount of money. A banknote is payable to the bearer on demand, and the amount payable is apparent on the face of the note. I know the reason why I talk fast, so that's the reason why I be slipping, so forgive me. A banknote is known as a bill or a note, i.e. a debt note. A banknote is a bill or a form of currency that one party can use to pay another. In the US, only the Federal Reserve Bank is allowed to print banknotes for money. Everybody hear that? Only the United States is allowed to print banknotes. So if you get banknotes from a commercial bank and commercial banks receive checks, i.e. bill of exchanges, then it just said the only person is allowed to print paper currency, i.e. banknotes, i.e. promissory notes. Then that means that everybody's in on it. While banknotes used to be backed by precious metals such as gold and silver in 1971, I was born January 14, 1907. The Specie Resumption Act was instituted January 14th in 1875. It's supposed to have been back in the circulation. It says here, while banknotes used to be backed by precious metals such as gold and silver, in 1971, the United States government went off the gold standard, making American banknotes a fiat currency that it was backed instead by good faith. All right? Everybody see the hypocrisy in this? When your Constitution clearly says that the only thing to use the Constitution paying for a debt is gold and silver. Y'all don't hear me. Y'all don't hear me. So we did banknote, we did money. All right, let's do promissory note. Just make it more clear. Also from enforceability. A promissory note. What is a promissory note? A promissory note, let me make sure everyone sees this. What is a promissory note? A promissory note is a written and signed promise to repay a sum of money in exchange for a loan or other finances. I repeat, everyone needs to listen to me. If you're holding up any type of denomination, what they call a paper currency, and it's a banknote that's issued from the federal government, then this is what you should be defining that which you're holding up. A promissory note is a written, signed promise, a contract, agreement, a deal has been struck. This is how they struck gold, y'all. Because you agreed to this, you endorsed this. A promissory note is a written and signed promise. Our promise is a pledge. It's a security interest to repay a sum of money. So if you're holding that, then that means that you still got to pay back money in exchange for a loan or a financing. So that means that if you got a promissory note, that's an instrument given for financing. So they gave you a loan. So you in debt even though you holding that instrument because it's a debt note. I'm gonna prove it to you in a second. A promissory note typically contains all the terms involved, such as the principal, debt, amount. Y'all need to be shaking y'all head right now. Why has no one told you this? Not just the debt amount, but an interest rate, maturity date, and a payment schedule, the date and place of issuance, and the issue signature. So every promissory note is already signed with the signature of a dead president. They ain't worried about paying the debt. They dead and gone. You hold it, you pay the debt. Why? Because it's a debt note, and you pay the interest on the maturity date that is fixed for. Y'all better see what's coming. Although financial institutions may issue them, for instance, you might be required to sign a promissory note to take out a small personal loan. Promissory note also allows companies and individuals to get financing from a non-bank source. From a non-bank source. This source can be an individual or a company willing to carry the note and provide the financing under the agreed upon term. In effect, promissory notes can enable another to be a lender. All right, it's right there. Promissory notes are called bank notes. Bank notes are what you get when you go get paid, or when you open up an account. You got to deposit these notes in it. You can't deposit a check to open up an account because ain't no notes to back that promissory note. That to go to an instrument called a check. Why? Because you don't understand what a check is. You don't understand what a bank note nor a check. You don't understand what a bill of exchange is nor a promissory note. Or else you wouldn't be transacting business under these contracts that they created and that you endorse. You endorse this backing. So it's agreed upon contract. You struck a deal. Reiterate. A promissory note is a financial instrument. So let's say like this. A dollar bill is a financial instrument that contains a written promise by one party, the note issuer or maker, to pay another party, the note payee, the one who holding it, a definite sum of money, either on demand or at a specific future date. So the promissory note is a financial instrument that contains a written promise. The written promise is the fact that you being the issuer or the bearer of the instrument supposed to be paid something, but you're not getting paid because you're getting another promise when you go in to redeem it. A promissory note typically contains all terms pertaining to the indebtedness. The indebtedness. When you got credit, that means you indebted. You still owe, such as principal amount, interest rate, maturity date, place of issuance, and the issue signature. It's already signed. Dead, done deal. In terms of their legal enforceability, everybody better listen. In terms of their legal enforceability, promissory notes lie somewhere between the informality of an IOU and the rigidity of a loan contract. I repeat, in terms of their legal enforceability, promissory notes lie somewhere between the informality of an IOU and the rigidity of a loan contract. So it's not a bill of exchange. A bill of exchange is a check that could be endorsed for demand payment, but not for these promissory notes. Because if this is what you're getting, that means you agree, endorse the agreement by way of striking the deal to be under the jurisdiction, be subject to debt, because that instrument that you hold is a debt note, an IOU. So they're not paying you anything. So you working for nothing, actually. All the property you holding to pay with these IOUs have not been paid for. So guess what? They coming for your property. How they come for it? All they do is raise inflation. That's how they do it. You can't pay for it anymore. It's automatically foreclosed. If the house ain't worth that, they come for your personal assets. Y'all better understand. Let's find another source. Who else? Did we do banknote? Banknote. I think we did this one already. Yeah, we did this already. Let's go back here. Check. Somebody has to teach you. I could have not even said anything because I'm not in this for the money, because there ain't no money. There is no money out there. So I'm trying to assist you and giving you an understanding about where the money at. Because the money is sitting in Fort Knox right now. The money belongs to somebody who financed the United States. I told you and explained this in other lectures. All right. But you're not going to listen to me. But I still have to do my job. So check this out. Checks What is it? How bank checks work, and how to write one. What is a check? A check is a written, dated, and signed draft that directs a bank to pay a specific sum of money to the bearer, i.e., the bearer of the instrument. If you hold it, you have the right to the title of the property. Whenever you redeem that bearer instrument that you hold, called a check, you have the right to redeem it for the property that whoever's holding it. And in this case will be the bank. All right? Alongside the property that you bought. But you can't, the property that you bought actually never was paid for. That's the whole gimmick. You never pay for anything. You get the right to use it because that's what they deem as legal tender. All right? But as a result of inflation, which is what we're into, there's going to be another depression. And it's on its way. A check is a written, dated, signed draft that directs a bank to pay a specific sum of money to the bearer. The person or entity writing the check is known as the payer or drawer, while the person to whom the check is written is the payee. The drawee, on the other hand, is the bank on which the check is drawn. So a check is a written instrument that can be signed as a draft that directs a bank, i.e. the drawee. The drawee is the one who works for the bank that pays the payer or the drawer once it's signed an amount that's supposed to be on the check to pay the payee, the one who's going to be holding the instrument as a result of the services and goods that were rendered. All right, so this is what a check is. A check, it can be post-dated, it can be paid on demand, it can be broken up, partial payment. So the check is a written, dated, signed draft that directs a bank to pay a specific sum of money to the bearer. Checks instructs a financial institution to transfer funds from the payer's account to the payee's on that person's account. Check features include the date, the payee's lines, the amount of the check, the payer's endorsement, and the memo line. Types of checks include certified checks, cashier checks, payroll checks, and also called paychecks. In some countries, such as Canada and England, the spelling used it's used check. All right. How checks work. It's very important. How does a check work? A check is a bill of exchange or a document that guarantees a certain amount of money. It's printed for the drawing bank. It's printed for the drawing bank to provide to an account holder, the payer, to use. The payer writes the check and gives it to the paid, who then takes it to their bank for cash or deposit into an account. So he can cash that check or deposit the check into his own personal account for the medium of exchange, i.e. the currency or i.e. the money. But do he get money back? No, he gets nothing but promises. Check essentially provides a way to instruct the bank to transfer funds from one payer account to the paid or the payee's account. The use of checks allow two or more parties to make a monetary transaction without using physical currency. Instead, the amount for which the check is written is substituted for the physical currency on the same amount. Why? Because the check in paper currency, i.e. promissory notes, holds the same value. They're nothing more than a medium of exchange, a negotiable instrument. They're not money, even though they deemed illegal, it's unconstitutional. Why? Because it doesn't fit the requirement of a commodity. Checks are generally written against the checking account, but they can also be used to move funds from savings to other types of accounts. Most important aspect about this is the use of a check allows two or more parties to make a monetary transaction without using physical currency. We know currency is what? The medium of exchange, use of account, store, transfer, or defer payment. Credit. All right. Instead, the amount for the check is substituted, exchanged for. So that means that the amount that's written on the check doesn't have to be backed by any type of legal tender, because the legal tender is substituted for the amount written on the check. Just like the amount written on the promissory note, the amount is going to be written on the check. So it all equals to currency. Legal tender. Since gold and silver taken out of circulation, both should be used as legal tender. But no, they trick you. Why? Because one is the medium of exchange to be used to redeem the instrument, the bearer instrument, which is the property for money. But they got you thinking that promissory notes are money, and they are not. How? Let's validate this. So we just did check, and they said check is what? Bill of exchange. So what is a bill of exchange? These ain't my words, y'all. Bill of exchange definition, example, and how it works. What is a bill of exchange? A bill of exchange is a written order used primarily in the international trade that binds one party to pay fixed sum of money to another party on demand or at a predetermined date. Bills of exchange are similar to checks and promissory notes. They can be drawn by individuals or banks and are generally transferable by endorsement, i.e., by signing. When you sign something, you back in it. That's why when you turn it over, you sign it on the back. So a bill of exchange is a written order used primarily in international trade. Promissory notes are used in domestic trade. Bill of exchange or checks are used in international trade. Key takeaways. A bill of exchange is a written order binding one party to pay a fixed sum of money to another party on demand or at some point in the future. A bill of exchange often includes three parties. The drawee is the party that pays the sum, the payee receives the sum, and the drawer or payer is the one that obliges the drawee to pay the payee. All right? So that means that as a result of the bill of exchange, the drawee is obligated to pay the payee, the one with the instrument, as a result of the payment that's denoted on the actual instrument that he bears as a result of the employment of the bank by the payer. All right, the payer employs the bank. I'm gonna prove it to you. While a bill of exchange is not a contract itself, the involved parties can use it to specify the terms of a transaction, such as the credit term and the rate or accrued interest. So the bill of exchange is not the contract, but it can go into a contract if you don't know what the hell you're doing. Because when you take that bill of exchange for payment and for redemption, you don't redeem it back for payment. You redeem it back for a promise. This is what we all do. We redeem that bill of exchange back for a promise that they cannot pay. They were never able to pay it because the only true form of payment is gold and silver. All right. Understanding the bill of exchange. A bill of exchange transaction can involve up to three parties. The drawee, the payer, and the payee. The drawee is the part that pays the sum specified in the bill of exchange. Same thing we do with a check. Same thing. The only thing missing from a check is that it don't say bill of exchange. All right? It don't say bill of exchange. But when you get a bill of exchange, or even if you write bill of exchange on the check, you still ain't getting paid nothing because you're getting a promissory note, which is more debt. The payee is the one who receives the sum. The drawer is the party that obliges the drawee to pay the payee. The drawer and the payee are the same entity. You hear that? The drawer and the payee are the same entity unless the drawer transfers the bill of exchange to a third party payee. So actually the payee, the drawee is getting paid. Part itself. The drawer and the payee, the drawer and the payee are the same entity unless the drawer transfers the bill of exchange to a third party payee. All right, okay. Unlike a check, however, a bill of exchange is a written document outlining the debtor's indebtedness to the creditor. So it's a contract. It's a contract. You create a contract by way of striking a deal, by way of how you want to get paid. They're saying, well, look, we ain't got no gold and silver. We can't pay you today. So what we can do is give you this promise. You being ignorant agree with it because you think that's the proper form of payment. All right? You think that's a form of proper form of payment. The drawer has passed the instrument to you, so now you're the holder in due course now. You're the holder in due course. That brings me to this in closing. Well, not in closing. I got one more thing to cover. This is very closely. Now I'm going to use it using the proper terminology. Checks and paper money, or checks and banknotes. All right. Checks versus banknotes and overbill. Checks and banknotes are written commitments between two parties that confirm a financial transaction has been agreed upon. Checks are more often used in international trade, where banknotes are used most often in domestic trade. I just said that. All right. Checks and banknotes are two types of financial instruments used to confirm a deal has been struck. When you strike this deal, they struck gold, because the gold was supposed to be for you to strike gold. They struck it. All right. They get enriched, not with the real gold, but the paper currency, because that's their paper wealth. It's not real wealth, it's called paper wealth. All right. There's a difference. Both financial instruments are written commitments between the buyer and the seller, or any other party that are agreeing to the financial transaction. Bills of exchange are documents that show a buyer has agreed to pay a seller a specific amount to be paid at agreed upon point in time. Parties usually bring in a bank to issue the bill of exchange. Did y'all hear that? The parties usually bring in a bank to issue the bill of exchange due to the risk that come with international transactions. As such, the bill also is known as a bank draft. So when you open up a bank account or a business account or a checking account, who gives you the checks? The bank. So that means that the bank has now been employed by you to issue the bill of exchange, i.e. the check, to be subject to the payer who owns the check, who has the obligation to use it as a medium of exchange, to pay a debt with proper form of a medium of exchange, which is the only commodity that's allowed, which is gold and silver. But you don't have any gold and silver. So how could the payer pay you in a proper form? There's never been a proper form as a result of the species being taken out of circulation. So that means that the gold and silver, which was the property of the buyer, who's able to purchase it as a redeemable commodity, belongs to the owner of the assets that are able to be tradable, such as gold and silver. That's the crown, because the United States government only used paper currency as their medium of exchange, as we established with the banknote. Promissory notes are debt notes that provide finance to an individual or corporation from a non-traditional lender, such as one of the parties involved in a sale. So promissory note, banknotes are debt notes, i.e. promissory notes, banknotes are debt notes that provide finances. So when you take your check into the bank and they give you back a promissory note, you're actually getting finance. You're actually getting finance. They're giving you a loan. You're supposed to be coming and getting paid, but they're giving you a loan. Promissory notes have in the past mostly been used only by corporations, not individuals. Individuals, naturally, people use bills of exchange to redeem them. We don't need to redeem them for a promise. We can redeem them for gold, but we can't get the gold because they took it out of circulation. Why? Because the American citizens opt out as paper currency or promissory notes or banknotes being par with gold. What's his name? What's his name? Sherman stated it. That's why he passed the anti-Sherman Act, the Sherman Act. Promissory notes have in the past, as we said, mostly been used by corporations or high net worth investors, but have recently been used more often in real estate transactions under what we call wildcat banking. because they're not redeemable for gold and silver, so they only could be collateralized for what they call uh, uh, bonds, notes, or certificates. Bonds, notes, or certificates. All right. Bill of exchange. A bill of exchange is a written agreement between two parties, the buyer and the seller, used primarily in the international trade. It is the documentation that a purchasing party have agreed to pay a selling party a set sum at a predetermined time for delivering goods. The buyer or seller typically employs a bank. You hear that? I just said that. You employ the bank so that the bill of exchange could be created for you to do trade with. The bank is just the middleman. It's just a middleman. Bill of exchange can be transferred by endorsement. The bank can't endorse it. Only you can. Much like a check. They can also require the buyer to pay a third party, a bank, in the event that the buyer fails to make good in his agreement with the seller. With such a stipulation, the buyer bank will pay the seller bank, thereby completing the bill of exchange, then pursuing its customer for repayment. All right? Promissory notes. Promissory notes are similar to bills of exchange in that they too are financial instruments, not money. That it is a written promise to one party to pay another party. They are debt notes that provide financing for either a company or an individual from a source other than a traditional lender. Most commonly, the one party is the salesperson, in a sales transaction. In the United States, the promissory notes have historically been limited to uses to corporations or high net worth individuals, but have recently become more commonly used in primary real estate transactions. Promissory notes are retained by the payee or the seller. Listen to what I'm telling you. Promissory notes are retained by the payee or the seller. When the seller receives payment, what is the payment he gets? A promissory note. Because the instrument is written to the payee, i.e. the check, which is the medium of exchange. All right. Promissory notes are retained by the payee or seller, and once payment had been completed, must be canceled and returned to the issuer or buyer. In terms of illegal enforceability, a promissory note is more formal than an IOU, but less than a standard bank loan. All right. So the promissory note, hold on. Sorry about that, y'all. So very important. Promissory notes are retained by the payee. The payer writes the check or the bill of exchange and writes the amount that the payer or the drawer wants in lieu of the goods he receives from the seller, known as the payee. And usually the payment or the minimum payment for the minimum exchange, i.e. the check or the bill of exchange, is usually what we call banknotes, promissory notes. So it says promissory notes are retained by the payee or seller. Everybody pretty sure you got a bank account, right? And your bank account, you got a whole bunch of these promissory notes, right? Everyone, look at your bank statement, your bank account. I don't care if you're rich or you're poor, right? You got these bank notes, greenbacks, promissory notes, legal tender called currency, which was deemed legal according to amending of and altering of the law, but constitutionally they're unlawful because it's not a commodity, gold and silver. So as a result of that, you being the payer or the seller, you still hold these notes in your possession, right? You still hold these notes in possession. If you don't have these notes, that means you bought something with it, but you didn't really pay for it because all you had was an IOU. as a medium of exchange. You think they got you thinking it's money, and it's nothing more than a medium of exchange, a negotiable instrument to be paid at a later date. Because it just said promissory notes are retained by the payee, i.e., you or seller, and once payment has been completed, must be canceled and returned to the issuer or buyer. Who issues these paper currencies? The federal government. That's why CBDG has come into effect. Digital banking, digital currency. This is why. All right, so in closing, let me give you, there go that word, specimen. Let's take it back here right quick. Specimen, you see it on the $50 bill, all right? A negotiable instrument, right? A medium of exchange. They're calling it money, but we know it's not money because the promissory note is what you redeem it for, is what you get redeemed for when you have a check. A check is also a promissory note. It's called a bill of exchange. You promise to pay him on demand whenever the payee takes it to the drawee for redemption. But he's not supposed to get this back. He's supposed to get back gold and silver. All right? These are the specimens of a bill of exchange. Everybody look at the checks. Pull out the checks. They look darn near similar to a check, how they written out. The only thing missing on the check is the note bill of exchange. But if you wrote bill of exchange on the check to be drawn on the drawee, they can't give you back no gold and silver. They giving you back promissory notes. All right? And you taking that promise to go buy something with a promise that you're going to pay it back. You can never pay back that promise. A bill of exchange is not backed by any sufficient funds sitting in the account because it's substituted for currency. You don't believe me? Well, believe Harvard. In closing, right of holder, make sure you see this. Harvard Law Review. Harvard Law Review. Now I use Investopedia to validate what I'm saying, but Harvard's gonna validate what I'm saying. I didn't go to law school. I didn't go to no college. I didn't sit underneath no professor. My professors were my ancestors who taught me by listening to what's being said, not acting on what's being said. You first must be a student, all right? And where you go to school to know how good of a student you are, who teach you to know what type of stuff you're being taught as a student. And the academic academics that's being taught there makes a good impression on how good of a student you be and you're going to be in that profession. because you're only as good as your maker. All right. And William Blackstone was the highest standard in lieu of what we call English common law. And this common law at the time of him was deficient, according to his commentaries. So if they were deficient, he was a member of the King's Bench. So no matter how those who study law, how deficient they are. They didn't go to the schools, universities, inner temple, middle temple, outer temple, like he did. They members of the Bar Association. Rights of holder of checks against the drawee, i.e. bill of exchange. The only thing the bank has is what? Promissory notes. Nothing more than promises. America's been promising for us to pay us back all the way from the founding of this country. The Bank of America. Let's see. Law Review, May 1925. Everybody write that down. Notice the verbiage that they use in this law review in regards to the synonymous of a check and a bill of exchange. All right. The article is labeled Rights of the Holder of a Bill of Exchange against the drawee. We know the drawee worked for the bank. So that means that he was employed by the payer, i.e. the payer, or what we call the drawer. He's obligated. If the question were put to the average layman, whether the holder of a check, i.e. bill of exchange, to take the most common instance of a bill of exchange, had any effective right against the drawee bank, it is believed that almost universal response would be to the effect that, of course, the holder may insist upon payment by the bank if there are funds on deposit to cover the amount, meaning that money must already be in the account to cover the check when the check is deposited. That's a layman's understanding, all right? And if the same question were propounded to the average lawyer, the reply generally would be, at least if the lawyer had in mind the provisions of the Uniform Negotiable Instrument Law, that the holder had no right against the bank. It is the purpose of this paper to inquire into the accuracy of these two views. So from a layman's term, we're thinking that money had to be in the account, i.e. promissory notes, which we call money, to order for a check to clear, i.e. a bill of exchange for payment, all right? In the eyes of a lawyer, when we argue against that theory, the lawyer claims that the party who's arguing that matter has no claim, basically. The holder has no right against the bank. So that's what they're telling us. We got no right against the bank in regards to our request to be redeemed with lawful currency, i.e. money. That's what they're saying. This is what they will say or would say if you went to the bank. And 9 times out of 10, everyone who gets that remark will agree to it. Why? Because you don't know banking law. In order to bring a claim in regard to this, you must go to a court of law. But as soon as you receive the banking disclosure, they tell you to waive your right to a trial by jury because they know what they're doing is unlawful. They want you to waive it. When you start questioning the validity of that instrument that you're holding in your hand. I got 2 cases on the docket right now. Bank of America and the United States Department of Treasury. I showed you that in if I'm not mistaken, lecture 5. I showed you that. Lecture 5 or 6. I'm mistaken. But check this out. Orders drawn on particular funds are generally construed as assignment in which or in whole or in part, as they may be of a designated fund, and would naturally follow the assignee and naturally, let me just read that again. Orders drawn on a particular fund are generally construed as assignments in whole or in part, as the case may be, of the designated fund. It would naturally follow the assign that the assignee would have his appropriate remedies, whatever they may be, against the debtor. Such orders are not bills of exchange, which must be free of conditional elements. An instrument cannot serve the primary functions of a bill of exchange if honor depended upon the existence or a sufficiency of a specific fund. Once again, such orders are not bills of exchange, which must be free of conditional elements. An instrument cannot serve the primary functions of a bill of exchange if its honor depended upon the existence or sufficiency of a specific fund. So that means that, as they're saying, that if you take a check to the bank and that there's money needs to be in that funding to back that check or that bill of exchange, then that's not a bill of exchange. Because the bill of exchange is supposed to be exchanged for the minimum of exchange, that was considered lawful money, which is gold and silver. And you ain't got no gold and silver sitting in that bank. All right? No bank has gold and silver. The only thing they have is that sufficiency of a specified fund, or what we call paper currency or promissory notes. The financial responsibility of the parties thereto indeed may be difficult to determine as practical matters of business, but such difficulty is inherited in any system of exchange of bill upon credit. Did you hear that? The financial responsibility of the parties thereto indeed may be difficult to determine as a matter of business, as a practical matter of business, but such difficulty is inherent in any system of exchange built upon credit. Credit is debt. When you get credit, they extending the debt to a long period of time. So it's a promissory note or a check that's backdated or dated for the future, post-dated. All right. The existing amount of a particular fund would involve inquiries quite out of place in commercial transactions regarding bill of exchanges, if they are really to be circulable like money. The orders are the designated funds. That orders on designated funds are interpreted as assignments seem to be duly largely, if not entirely, to the fact that they were objectively as bill of exchange. The question was whether the payee of the order had preferred claims over other creditors of the drawer to a fund in the hands of a debtor of the latter. The draft was made on S, the deputy of W, out of the money due to me from Horace Walpole out of the exchequer, because that's where the word check comes from, exchequer. The drawer having become bankrupt, it was decreed that the payee, when entitled to be paid out of the fund, the Lord Chancellor said, Lord Chancellor are the ones who are in charge of the exchequer, and Lord Chancellors are the ones who oversee the King's Bench. All right. This demand and the instrument under which the defendant's claim is not a bill of exchange, but a draft, not to pay generally, but out of his particular fund, which creates no personal demand. Therefore, not a draft on a personal credit to go into the common course of negotiation, which is necessary. 1 second. Let me just go back real quick. Therefore, not a draft on a personal credit to go into the common course of negotiations, which is necessary to a bill of exchange, by a draft on the general credit of the personal drawing. The drawee and the endorsement without reference to any particular fund. So that means that no particular fund had to be there in regards to for a bill of exchange to be clear for the primary function of what a bill of particular represents. Because a bill of exchange means to be paid on demand. That's what a bill of exchange is. To whoever the payee is, when he takes that instrument that he read, he needs to be paid on demand, not a promise. Most of you have not been paid. You've been paid with a promise. All right? You've been paid with a promise. Let me see if there's anything else. In closing, counting tools. What is a bill of exchange? A bill of exchange is a binding agreement by one party to pay a fixed amount of cash, i.e. promissory notes, to another party as of a predetermined date or a demand. Bills of exchange are primarily used in international trade. Their use has declined as other forms of payment have become more popular. There are three essential entities that may be involved with bill of exchange transactions. They are as follows: drawee, drawer, and payee. Drawer, drawee, and payee. The information included in the bill of exchange normally includes the following information: the title. A check has everything other than a title that says bill of exchange, which is noted on the face of the document. Amount to be paid expresses the both numerical and written in text. As of, which is the date which the amount is to be paid, can be stated after a certain number of days after the event, such as shipment or receipt of delivery. Payee states that the name and the possibility of the address of the party be paid. Identification number. The bill should contain the unique identifier number and the signature. Signature means to endorse. The bill is signed by a person authorized to commit the drawee to pay the designated amount of the funds. Issuers of bill of exchange use their own format, so there is some variation from the information just noted, as well as in the layout of the document. All right. So I'm not telling you all to go up there and create your own bill of exchanges, because in order for the bill of exchange to be effective, it must be able to be redeemed for some type of medium of money. All right. So that's the reason why monopolies automatically are created and establish a relationship with a bank or employs a bank. All right. Because when a buyer buys something, he's buying your employment. He's paying for your employment. So you're actually being bought. All right. You're being bought, but you're not being paid for your services. And with that, I close. I love you all. And it's very important to understand, that I didn't go to no schools, colleges, and things of that nature. This all comes from self-study. I know that when I speak, I speak fast, I speak passionate, so that's why I stumble a lot, but the information is concrete. If it's not, somebody please say something, but if it is, this is a platform, this is a temple, this is a church that doesn't require payment, because you can never pay for these teachings. We do rotate the medium of exchange, such as the IOU, as a form of charitable donation, because, a man it needs to be honored, and I'm doing this work for you. I'm not doing it for myself. So all those who, at the sound of my voice, you can either cash app 33 English Church on the Cash App, or $ Clifford Jefferson L for your donations, and they will be acceptable, as well as law class will be starting possibly next week. So all those who would like to attend, the first class will be called The Study of the Law. Once again, the study of the law. There is a donation fee for those classes, all those who would like to attend. So please reach out to me or Archbishop when you get a chance. And we'll be glad to give you the information in regards to how that will be structured and when it will be instituted. So with that, I greet you all as I meet you all.